Presenting our podcast, Got Milk, the Indian Dairy Context, brought to you by Shunya Agritech, India's first animal nutrition and well-being focused organization. Say hello to your hosts, Gear and Sahil.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a topic that you might not expect: fodder.
Fodder?
Yeah, the green stuff animals eat.
That's it.
It turns out it can be surprisingly complex, especially in India.
Oh, yeah.
They have the world's largest livestock population, and we have this fascinating academic review article to help us break it down. It's called A Review of India's Fodder Production Status and Opportunities.
That's our deep dive for today.
And luckily, we have our expert here
Hello.
to guide us through.
It's getting more interesting than people think.
Yeah, I think when people think of fodder, they don't often think of like the complex challenges or the
And nuances.
the nuances. Yeah.
You've got to think of the sheer scale of India's livestock.
Yeah.
We're talking 192.52 million cattle,
Wow.
109.85 million buffalo,
Jeez.
and millions more sheep and goats.
Right.
So just the logistics of feeding all of those animals, it's mind-boggling.
That's incredible. And it's not even to mention the cultural and economic significance of livestock in India. It's not just feeding animals, it's about people's livelihoods.
Absolutely. Livelihoods for millions. And in fact, almost 1 billion people globally rely on livestock for their food and income.
Wow.
But there's a problem.
Okay.
India's animal productivity is lagging behind the global average.
Why is that?
That's because of the lack of good quality fodder.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So we have a huge demand and not enough supply, a big fodder gap.
Exactly.
Can you give us some of the hard numbers for that gap?
Absolutely. So this review highlights some pretty stark deficits.
Okay.
35.6% for green fodder.
Wow.
10.95% for dry fodder.
Things like straw?
Exactly. Things like straw, and a whopping 44% for concentrate feed.
Wow.
Yeah. So these shortages are hitting farmers hard,
Yeah.
especially the regional and seasonal variations.
With those kinds of numbers, it's clear why productivity is taking a hit.
Right.
But it can't just be about a growing livestock population.
Yeah.
What are some of the underlying challenges that are making fodder production so difficult in India?
It's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a real web of complexity.
Yeah.
Beyond just the increasing number of mouths to feed,
Yeah.
there's resource constraints.
Like what?
Like India faces limited land and water availability, and the quality of both is declining. So you can imagine trying to grow all this nutritious fodder
Yes.
with those limited resources.
That's really tough.
Yeah, it is.
And you mentioned earlier a shortage of high-quality fodder seed.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Only about 25 to 30% of the needed seed is even available.
Wow.
So you can have the land, you can have the water,
Right.
but if you don't have the seeds,
Yeah, then what?
you can't grow anything.
It feels like one hurdle after another.
It really is.
Are there any other challenges that farmers are facing?
Look, there's tons more.
Okay.
You've got pests and diseases.
Right.
You've got low fodder prices,
Mhm.
which makes it hard to make a profit.
Yeah.
Rising labor costs.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so it's a very challenging landscape for fodder production.
So we're painting a rather bleak picture here,
Yeah, kind of.
but I'm hoping that there's a reason we're doing a deep dive on this today.
Of course.
That this review offers some solutions.
Oh, yeah.
As well as just laying out the problems.
Absolutely.
So where do we even begin to tackle a problem this big?
A good starting point is improving existing fodder production practices.
So working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Okay, so what does that look like practically?
Well, one key area is nutrient management.
Uh-huh.
The paper specifically discusses integrated nutrient management,
Mm-hmm.
which focuses on effectively using manure.
Manure.
Yeah, to improve soil fertility. So it's a way to maximize existing resources.
Interesting. So it's more than just spreading manure around.
Right. It's analyzing your soil nutrient content, it's composting your manure properly, and it's timing applications for optimal uptake by the fodder crops.
Oh, so there's a science to it.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the seed shortage?
Yeah,
Are there ways to address that?
absolutely. So the paper suggests increasing the seed replacement rate.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, farmers often reuse seeds, but the quality degrades over time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So boosting that replacement rate to at least 10%
Okay.
could have a significant impact.
So fresh seeds, fresh start.
Exactly.
What else?
Improving seed supply chains and marketing would also be a huge help,
Yeah.
making it easier for farmers to access high-quality seeds.
Yeah.
That could really improve yields.
And that would ripple across the whole industry.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Are there any research efforts focused on this?
Absolutely. So there's ongoing research to boost seed yield in fodder crops.
Okay.
So, for example, scientists are experimenting with breeding programs to develop varieties that are more drought tolerant
Oh,
or
cool.
resistant to specific pests.
That makes sense. So far, we've been talking about optimizing what's already being done.
Right.
But are there any outside-the-box ideas for growing fodder? Anything that really challenges the traditional methods?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there are some really innovative concepts in this review.
Okay.
Like imagine incorporating fodder crops into existing cropping systems.
Okay.
The dominant system in India is rice-wheat rotation,
Right.
which leaves a gap in fodder availability during the summer months.
Makes sense.
What if instead of just rice and wheat, farmers rotated in fodder crops like Sudan grass in the summer?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
So instead of a monoculture, you have a more diverse system that can provide fodder year-round.
exactly. And there are added benefits for soil health and biodiversity.
That makes a lot of sense. Another idea is making better use of marginal lands.
Right.
India has over 121 million hectares of degraded land.
It's huge.
So what if we could use that for fodder production?
Right. So the paper suggests agroforestry systems,
Okay.
planting drought-tolerant trees and shrubs
Huh.
that are also good sources of fodder.
Oh, cool.
So really turning a liability into an asset.
I like the way you think.
Thanks.
This is starting to sound a lot less bleak than it did at the beginning. Are there any other out there ideas being explored?
Well, there's one that might surprise you, hydroponics.
Hydroponics.
Yeah.
For fodder.
Growing fodder without soil.
I usually associate that with like trendy urban gardens,
Yeah.
not large-scale animal feed.
Right. But it's a fascinating concept.
How does that even work?
Well, we'll get into the details of hydroponics in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm intrigued, listeners. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive into the world of hydroponics and explore even more innovative solutions to India's fodder challenge.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of fodder.
When we left off, we were starting to talk about hydroponics.
Right.
It really caught my attention.
It's fascinating.
But I still have a lot of questions, like, for starters, how does it actually work?
So picture this. Instead of planting seeds in the ground, you're growing them in trays or vertical towers,
Okay.
where the roots are bathed in a nutrient-rich water solution.
So no soil at all?
Sometimes an inert medium is used,
Oh, okay.
like cocoa coir or perlite, just to support the plants.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is that they're getting all their nourishment from that water solution.
Wow.
And because they're not wasting energy searching for nutrients in the soil, they grow much faster.
That's wild. So how does this translate to fodder production?
Yeah.
Can we grow all kinds of fodder hydroponically?
Well, a lot of types of fodder crops can be grown hydroponically, especially grasses like barley, wheatgrass, even sorghum.
Okay.
And you create this really controlled environment
Oh.
with the optimal temperature, humidity, and lighting.
So it's like a year-round growing season, no matter what's happening outside.
Exactly.
That's so cool. But what about the environmental impact?
Right.
We often hear about hydroponics being a sustainable approach to agriculture. Is that really the case?
It has the potential.
Okay.
One of the biggest advantages is water efficiency.
Okay.
Since the water is recirculated in a closed system,
Right.
there's very little waste compared to traditional field irrigation.
Mixed.
We're talking up to 90% less water usage in some cases.
Wow, that's a significant saving, especially in a place like India,
Right.
where water scarcity is a major issue. Are there other environmental benefits?
Absolutely, because you're not dealing with soil, you eliminate the need for pesticides and herbicides,
Right.
which can be harmful to the ecosystem.
And human health.
Exactly. And since you can grow hydroponically in urban settings or even vertically,
Right.
you reduce the pressure on land conversion and deforestation.
It's like creating little pockets of green in unexpected places.
Right.
It's really cool. But if hydroponics is so efficient and environmentally friendly, why isn't everyone doing it?
Good question.
There must be some drawbacks.
There are definitely challenges.
Okay, like what?
One of the biggest is the initial investment cost.
Okay.
Setting up a hydroponic system can be expensive,
Yeah,
especially on a large scale.
makes sense.
You need specialized equipment, you need climate control
Yeah.
systems, and you need a reliable source of energy to power it all.
So that's a barrier, especially for small-scale farmers.
Exactly, especially in developing countries.
Are there other challenges?
Another is the technical expertise required.
Okay.
Hydroponics is more complex than traditional agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
You need to carefully monitor and adjust the nutrient solution,
Right.
maintain the right growing conditions, prevent diseases.
It's not as simple as just throwing some seeds in water and walking away.
Not quite,
Okay.
but it does require some knowledge and training.
Uh-huh.
But thankfully, there are a lot of efforts to make it more user-friendly,
That's good.
especially for those small-scale farmers.
Okay, so we've covered hydroponics.
Right.
But let's go back to some of those other solutions mentioned in the paper.
Yeah.
One that caught my eye was integrating fodder crops into those existing cropping systems.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Can you break down how that would work in practice?
So imagine a farmer in India
Okay.
who typically follows that traditional rice-wheat rotation.
Mm-hmm.
This system works well for grain production, but it leaves that gap in fodder availability in the summer.
Right.
Now imagine that same farmer planting Sudan grass.
Sudan grass.
Yeah, it's a fast-growing, high-yielding fodder crop
Okay.
after harvesting the wheat in the spring.
So instead of leaving the land fallow, they're using it to grow fodder.
Right.
And ensure that more consistent supply throughout the year.
Right.
I like it.
And then, after the Sudan grass is harvested, the farmer can plant rice as usual
Okay.
with the onset of the monsoon.
So they're still getting their grains, but they're adding this valuable fodder crop to the rotation.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
Are there other benefits to this integrated approach?
A lot of potential advantages.
Okay.
Like introducing fodder crops can break pest and disease cycles, improve soil health by adding organic matter, and enhance biodiversity.
So it's a much more holistic and sustainable way to manage the land.
Exactly.
But are there any challenges to implementing this kind of system?
Of course, no system is without its challenges.
Right.
Farmers need access to good quality seeds.
Uh-huh.
And they need the knowledge and the skills to manage these new crops effectively.
Makes sense.
There might be some initial costs too,
Right.
but with the right support,
Yeah.
integrating these fodder crops could be a game changer.
Okay. That's really promising. We've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
From optimizing existing fodder production to these innovative approaches
Right.
like hydroponics and integrated cropping systems.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the long-term sustainability of these solutions?
Well, I think they have the potential to be far more than just quick fixes.
Okay.
If we approach them strategically, they can help us shift towards a more sustainable and resilient model.
One that benefits both people and the environment.
Exactly.
That's a vision worth striving for. But as with any complex issue, there's always more questions to explore.
Of course.
One that's been on my mind is about dry fodder.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about green fodder, but what about those dry sources like straw?
Yeah.
What's being done to make those more nutritious and palatable for livestock?
That's a great question, and one that we'll address right after this.
And we're back for the final part of our fodder deep dive. We were starting to talk about dry fodder.
Yeah.
It might not be as glamorous as hydroponics
Right.
or these fancy cropping systems, but it's still a crucial part of livestock diets.
Absolutely, especially in India.
So in India, dry fodder, mainly crop residues like rice and wheat straw, makes up a significant portion of what livestock eat.
Yeah, that's right.
But the challenge is that while it provides bulk, it's not very nutritious. It fills them up but doesn't give them what they need.
Right.
Especially given the fodder shortages we've been discussing.
Right.
That seems like a problem.
It is a problem, and that's why there's so much research and innovation focused on improving the nutritional value of these readily available resources.
So what are they doing?
Well, one interesting approach is something called a complete feed system.
A complete feed system?
Yeah.
What makes it so complete?
So it's all about creating a carefully balanced blend of ingredients
Okay.
that provide all the necessary nutrients for that specific animal.
Okay.
So it might include treating the straw to improve its digestibility,
Mm-hmm.
supplementing it with protein sources,
Okay.
things like oilseed cakes or pulses,
Got it.
and then adding those essential minerals and vitamins.
So it's like taking those low-quality residues and giving them a nutritional makeover.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
The goal is to turn these often overlooked resources into a nutritionally complete feed,
Makes sense.
so you can reduce the reliance on those more expensive concentrates.
Right, that are harder to get.
Exactly.
That sounds incredibly efficient. Are there other ways to improve the digestibility of the straw?
Yeah.
Because I imagine it's pretty tough for animals to break down.
It is. Straw can be very fibrous and difficult to digest.
Yeah.
So there are a few methods being used.
Okay.
Some involve chemical treatments,
Okay.
using things like urea or ammonia
Uh-huh.
to break down the lignin in the straw.
It makes it easier to digest.
Exactly, like
Uh.
pre-digesting it for them. That's a good way to put it. What else?
Other methods focus on physical processing,
Go.
chopping, grinding, soaking.
So breaking it down.
Exactly, into smaller particles so it's easier for them to access the nutrients.
It's really amazing to see all this innovation
Yeah, it really is.
that's going into making the most of these readily available resources.
It highlights the ingenuity of the farmers and researchers working on this problem.
We've journeyed deep into the world of fodder,
We have.
explored the challenges, the innovations, and some potential solutions
Absolutely.
to a problem that affects India and the whole world.
It really does.
This has been an eye-opening experience for me.
You too.
I hope it has been for you too, listener.
I hope so.
We started this deep dive asking if the humble fodder could be the key to a more sustainable future.
Right.
And based on everything we've learned,
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes.
I think so.
The innovations we've discussed
Yeah.
demonstrate the potential for creating a more resilient and equitable food system, absolutely one where everyone thrives.
But as with any complex issue,
Of course.
our journey doesn't end here.
Right.
There are still questions to be asked,
Data.
challenges to overcome, new discoveries to be made.
It's an ongoing process.
So, listener, as we wrap up this deep dive, we'll leave you with a final thought.
Yeah.
Will India's push for fodder innovation lead to a global shift towards more sustainable agricultural practices?
It's a question worth considering.
We hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and the tools to explore this question and many more.
We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of fodder.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of Got Milk, the Indian Dairy Context. Subscribe to the podcast. And a reminder, this episode was brought to you by Shunya Agritech, India's first animal nutrition and well-being focused organization. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.